Okay, maybe I'll just start introducing myself and give a quick outline of the session, and then if Mr. Lesch starts, will join us later, we can always give him the word. So welcome very much to the Germany session today. My name is Anna Reiner. I'm the Africa manager of the German Agribusiness Alliance based in Berlin. The German Agribusiness Alliance is an initiative of German companies and associations from the food sector who want to contribute to more sustainable agricultural development in partner countries all around the world. So we focus on Asia, Eastern Europe, and since 2 years also very much new on Africa. So if we look at Germany today, we can see that half of the land is used for agricultural purposes. So Germany earns about 50 billion euros a year. And what Germany has are very high yields, and we also export 1/3 of our products. So we're the first largest exporter of agricultural products in the world. So many of you may question why, if Germany is such a big agricultural country, why you don't see much more German investment into the session in Africa, sorry. So if we look at the structure of the German agribusiness economy, we see that it's a lot of mid-sized enterprises. There's small farmers who are not really going abroad and investing, building companies in Africa. But what Germany is very good at is add value along the value chain. So we can provide high quality inputs and seeds, such as fertilizers. We have solutions for post-harvest losses. We can provide mechanization, and what we can definitely do is share know-how and expertise in the agribusiness sector. So our companies are very much eager to support you in strengthening your food systems to secure food security. And also, I think once everything is rolling, this trade can also be a basis for further investments from German companies. That's at least the development we see, for example, in Asia or Eastern Europe, where, for example, the mechanization companies first started trading, developing the mechanization sector, and once it has reached a certain level, you will also see the German companies build factories there. So I think Mr. Lesch is not yet in the session. He's our head of agriculture from the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. So I hope he will join us later and give us an insight of what our ministry is doing in the field of agriculture, which is one of their strategic priorities, and also what they do with the private sector, because in the last years, the German development aid focused much more on cooperation with the German, European, but also with the African private sector in order to create jobs and prosperity on the ground. So, but as I always like to say, good ideas do not work alone if we don't have the financing to realize them. So I'm very happy that Keppler is here with us today. She's the regional director for Southern Africa from the DEG. And she will give us an insight now on what kind of financing opportunities there are for German, African, international companies when engaging in the field. So thank you very much, Anne, for being with us today. And as you have already mentioned before to everyone, please feel free to use the chat option in case you have any questions, comments, or insights you would like to share. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the introduction, Anna. And I hope everyone is not going to get confused with Anna and Anne on the presentation today. So we'll test you on that a bit later. Please, as Anna said, please make it interactive. If you've got questions on the slides I'm presenting, please do reach out in between, and I'll try and keep an eye on the chat box as well in order to address them. As we planned, we thought we'll start with the public sector side and then move into the private sector. But now we're starting with the private sector, which is obviously an area very close to my heart. I'm based in Johannesburg for the last 9 years, have been with DEG for 15 years already, and really believe in what we do on the private sector part. And now also obviously just listened to our colleagues from Bio and from FinFund, Yari and Gaten, on the points they've shared. So I'll try and give a perspective now from DEG. And I'm sure most of you do know DEG, but I'll quickly introduce ourselves to you. I've also got my colleagues Thomas Mayer and Markson Baker with us if you want to look out for them on the chat box. But DEG is a German DFI. We are part of the KfW group. As you can see at the bottom left corner on our logo, the KfW abbreviation clearly outlines DEG, but it just gives us that a good host in a family of institutions. We've been founded in the 1960s with a mandate to promote private sector growth in emerging economies, and we've stuck to that mandate ever since. Our head offices are in Germany, and on the African continent, we've got offices in Abidjan, in Lagos, in Nairobi, and then the Joburg office, where the team present on the conference today is based. What do? We really look for long-term partnerships. And we not only say that because long-term funding is in our mandate, but for us, the partnership approach is really important. Whether we provide equity, whether we invest in a private equity fund, or we structure funding solutions for our clients, it's always with a longer term perspective. And that's maybe also why transactions take time. As Yari and Gaten also said in their earlier sessions, we don't want to we don't want to sprint to the start point of a marathon. We want to make sure we actually last throughout. Who are our customers? A really diversified portfolio. We've most probably got one of the broadest mandates yet, but agriculture is one of the areas we do cover, and that's certainly the focus point for today. Besides that, it's manufacturing, services. I've also got an example later for financial sector corporation, specifically with user funds in agriculture, and project finance / infrastructure. And there we focus on the broader backbone as well, which is also relevant and important for enabling trade. This is a quick overview just to position us on the far right within the KfW group. So KfW is the German promotional bank, has a huge array of domestic activities, also within the agricultural sector, but has 3 institutions who work on the international financing side. And just to put everyone in its little box, on the kind of like in the center, you've got KfW IPEX focusing on international project and export financing, large ticket, German content, global mandate. You've got KfW Development Bank, the public sector side. So the analogy would always be a little bit more on the World Bank side, while we are a bit more like the IFC, just in smaller. So that's the public sector mandate, and obviously also very much focused on implementing strategies from the Ministry of Cooperation and Economic Development. And then you've got DEG really focused on the private sector and trying to promote and support entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship in emerging economies. What does that mean for Africa? We've got a global portfolio of a bit more than 9 billion euros and 2 billion of that invested in Africa. As you can see, relatively equally split across the regions. The red dots are our office parts, and you can also see on the left-hand side the kind of impact we try and achieve with it. So we work with a lot of partners, over 150 directly, but also through our private equity funds, we add a couple of more indirect investee companies we support. And on the bottom, you can already see that we do a little bit more than just financing, and I'll explain what develop and upscaling projects are on the next slide. So which solutions does DEG offer? And I think that's the interesting part, because I assume a few of you listening now are really keen to understand, how do I approach DEG? What funding solutions are there? What can we do? And the first part is always, where are you based? Who are you? If I can phrase it like that, to say, are you a private sector company? Are you established? Do you have a track record? Are you looking for growth and expansion? Do you want to build a new production facility or maybe modernize existing facilities? Are you planning to acquire a new business? Are you looking for a permanent working capital solution in an existing operations? A lot of those fall under our core mandate, which makes up a bit more than 90% of our balance sheet, which means we would you consider providing equity, a mezzanine solution, or long-term debt within a sweet spot ticket size between $10 and $30 million. And there on the ticket size part, you can already see the ecosystem, which Yari described in the previous session. And Yari, I hope you're okay for me quoting you on that, to say there's different DFIs who are active in the field and on the continent, but it's also a very good combination of skills, and rather adding to each other with different stages of businesses instead of all fishing in the same pond, if that makes sense. So for DEG, our ticket sizes are certainly a bit bigger, but we also target a different kind of companies. Then if we think about the equity part and you're a private equity fund and you're looking for an LP, then either you are of a certain size and you fall under our like core mandate and qualify for our direct investment part, or we've got a new initiative called Africa Grow, which focuses more on VC and SME focused private equity funds, mainly in Compact West Africa countries, but they are able to invest tickets between 5 and about 20 million euros. If you're a European company keen to invest in Africa, you may have already existing operations or you're considering setting up new operations. Our Africa Connect program might be of interest to you. This was launched under the same initiative as the Africa Grow fund of funds, but it targets European businesses investing on the continent with a very interesting offering of faster and also euro-based funding rates of up to 5 million euros. But the interesting part of our program, although those are smaller volumes, starts now, and that's a lot around what are actually solutions and what can we provide beyond finance, because obviously we are driven by the numbers on the top. But if you are an existing or prospective client of DEG, we also offer our business support services. And those are really aspects to say, how can you improve on what you do? And it doesn't necessarily mean bankability, because you may already be banked by us. But I think this continuous development and striving to get better on corporate governance, on risk management, obviously as a DFI on ESG and stakeholder management, but also resource and energy efficiency management. And that in the agricultural space focuses not only on energy, but also on water, on adequate use of fertilizers, on the right mix of fertilizers. That's where our business support services can come in with an advisory mandate and offer more than a pure funding package. We also have our upscaling program, which targets innovative younger businesses. So while our core funding mandate look at the established, profitable, larger scale transactions, we also got a way if you're starting a business and you've got an innovative idea in the agricultural space, check the upscaling terms, maybe apply on those programs, and they really help businesses develop. I've got a couple of examples of those coming up now. We also can help European businesses on funding feasibility studies. And we've got our Develop PPP project or program, which is open to European and international companies to really run a positive initiative. And a lot about it is around training, but also really developing good social standards in transactions. And Imran, I'll check with Gert how we're going to share the presentation afterwards to make it accessible to everyone. So what are we as DEG trying to sell? A little bit more than just the money, because that everyone can do. So we're trying to link our marketing and industry expertise. And one example there might, for example, be the Nougat Trade Fair, which is outside COVID times, hosted in Cologne every 2 years. And it's always an opportunity for our clients in the food and agricultural sector to join us for an evening in Cologne, to connect with our other clients, and to really also know who else is within the DEG network. Of our funding of solutions is tailored. So we don't have these, we obviously have standards, but we don't have the standard solution, which you either need to take or not accept. We provide long tenor funding. 4 years funding is our minimum tenor, and we can certainly go longer. We try and be competitive on pricing, and we certainly have the supports programs or the promotional programs, as I just explained, on the Develop PPP side with upscaling and also the BSS as a core part. During COVID now, and unfortunately, I couldn't really jump over that without mentioning it. We have developed certain programs as well, and please feel free to check our website there. So we had a couple of response programs to really help our clients through the hardships of the various lockdowns in various countries have provided. Working with DEG, it's a bit of a process, and I left that slide in here today to not be discouraging, but to be realistic around how to really access funding and how much preparation it takes. In the earlier session, again, it was mentioned that over 200 businesses apply and only a handful really access funding. That's certainly a statistic which is also true for us. But for us, the initial phase, which can take up to 9 months or even longer, we're working with certain companies for 12, 18 months until we actually close, is really the preparational phase. And I always say you want to date for a while until you get married. But this is really the part to get to know each other and to know that we enter into a partnership which lasts during the funding tenure as well. And I thought I'll bring a couple of examples to you. What are businesses we're actually working with on the continent? But before I go through those, Anna, I've also seen that Sebastian has just joined the session, and I'm not sure if I should rather pause and keep a few questions for later.
No, I agree with Sebastian that you will finish on your presentation and then he will give his input. So don't feel like you have to pause. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So one of the largest scale companies we are working with is a certainly well-known established business in Zambia, Zambeef, who we are working with for over a decade. We extended various long-term facilities to them and keep working with them also on our support programs. I included PalmC, which is a cooperation between Propaco, the French DFI, and DEG to give an idea how also the cooperation works, and that it's not only always one of us. The cooperation, especially between the European DFIs, is very close, and often we would certainly also team up and combine expertise on transactions. On the financial sector side, and that might be an interesting one, is the Africa Agriculture and Trade Investment Fund, which was originally founded and set up by the Ministry of Development Cooperation together with KfW. And after it had really proven its commercial viability, it was also an investment opportunity for DEG to extend more funding to the venture and to enable the fund to extend more funding to small and medium scale farmers on the continent and make funding accessible while creating local income and certainly decent jobs. Those are two examples from our Africa Connect program. To follow the originals or the first slide I showed you where I moved to the different parts. So those are German businesses. One, a German chocolate producer who's invested in Ghana and got funding through the Africa Connect Plan in order to expand its operations and create more jobs. And the second one is a Kenyan example of macadamia processing, who's now also expanding into avocados, which also help to create more jobs. So asking for SMEs, I think, and I see the one question on the chat, our main funding program is certainly more on the larger mid-scale business side. But there are opportunities if you may have a German partner, if you are looking at the upscaling program for different ideas. And those are two examples from our upscale, and we're just realizing I forgot to translate the heading. Apologies for that. But it's two examples from Kenya who actually both work on supply chains in the agricultural sector. So there are different ways and forms, and I think the one thing we'll always offer, reach out. If you've got an opportunity, you may get a no from us, and we are German, so you may get a no quickly and straightforward. But we're certainly always willing to look at proposals and consider. And I mentioned fertilizer and efficiencies before. There's one developed example in Nigeria where we are working with an actual direct client of ours on small-scale farmers in more rural areas, applying fertilizer in an efficient way, soil testing, and providing training mechanisms as well. So I think if you've got cards, I'll jump through that, but we've got 4 offices on the continent. Please do feel free to reach out for questions. Markson also just kindly posted our website link on the chat box, so please connect with us and reach out for questions. And I think I'll leave the floor to Sebastian Lesch now, and happy to answer any questions if we've got time at the end.
Thank you very much, Anne,
Thank you
for your deep insights. And I think it was a lot of information, so people now have some time to think about it and their questions. While I'm very happy to welcome Mr. Sebastian Lesch. He's head of the agriculture unit at our Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. And as I was already saying in the beginning in my introduction, agriculture is one of the strategic priorities of our ministry. There's quite a lot of activities going on, especially also quite a lot of activities with the German, but also with the African private sector. So Mr. Lesch, welcome to the session, and I'm looking forward to hear your insights about what the ministry is currently doing, what the priorities are in the strategies. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the floor. Thank you for inviting me to speak to you today on behalf of the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. Indeed, agriculture and rural development are key focal areas of German development cooperation. We consider pro-poor growth in the agricultural sector to be a very effective strategy to increase income and to reduce poverty. And that's why in 2014, the ministry established the One World No Hunger initiative, which was geared at and is geared at specifically to contribute to SDG 2, to eradicate hunger and malnutrition across the globe. And what we've done is we've rallied around 1.5 billion euros in the priority areas of food security, rural development. We have set up around 200 projects in 35 partner countries, just to show you the scope of that initiative. But if we look at the numbers, it's predicted that the SDGs, the 2030 agenda, currently has an annual investment gap of around 2.6 trillion US dollars. There are different figures around. The FAO says achieving the first 2 SDGs, that's eradicating hunger and poverty, requires an annual investment of 140 billion US dollars in agriculture and rural development. Whichever numbers you pick, it's pretty clear that these ambitious goals of SDG 1 and 2 can only be achieved if all players in society are involved in the efforts. This is nothing that public financing, state financing can in any way resolve. So we need to include the private sector. The need for investment in a sustainable agricultural and food industry that meets the needs of the future is such that it cannot be met through public funds alone. So public investments are necessary to improve infrastructure, to reduce transaction costs, to build capacities for risk mitigation. So governments do have a key role in creating a conducive investment climate in the agricultural sector, but it is the private investments in the end, particularly those of small and medium-sized actors along the agricultural value chain, that actually creates jobs and creates income and actually contributes towards the sustainable transformation and modernization of the agricultural systems particularly in Africa and the food sector. That we would all like to see. Now, if we look at the current situations that has also brought us together here virtually, then of course, seeing the global COVID pandemic, private investments into agriculture, both domestic and foreign, are very likely to decrease. But at the same time, they will have to play a major role also in the COVID-19 recovery efforts, because trying to build back better or build forward better, as some like to call it, and reconstruct a more resilient and sustainable global food system, all that will require the private sector as well. So what I would like to convey to you today is that we as the Development Ministry recognize Africa as a continent of opportunities. There is, of course, an enormous investment needs, but that is an opportunity. The sheer market size in Africa and the development potential presents a huge opportunity. One of those new opportunities for private investment into agriculture is emerging if we look at digital technologies that offer unique opportunities for improving food production, improving trade. This would, however, require considerable investment efforts to harness that full potential of that modern technology. For example, to create new opportunities for young Africans to enter training, to enter the agricultural sector or other businesses as well. We acknowledge that trend as well. We are implementing more than 50 digital projects with funding totaling 150 million euros. ranging really from strengthening good governance using internet-based public participation methods to the very practical things, app-based sales channels to farmers, but also telemedicine for providing healthcare in rural areas, all sorts of things, also very practical things geared to the needs of the farmers. This, I think, can enable countries to make true leaps forward in their development, and at the same time offers German and European businesses really new opportunities for investment. I would like to also mention the African Continental Free Trade Area that I think is a historical achievement or will become a historical achievement and presents or increases the great opportunity that is there. Once this African Continental Free Trade Area is operational, it will be the world's largest free trade area if you look at the number of countries involved, and it will be a huge market. So there's a lot of opportunity there. I think that the Investment Food Forum is an important platform to discuss those emerging opportunities in the African agriculture and food investment landscapes. And I would like to really say we recognize the important role that the private sector companies can play in contributing to development objectives. The private sector is extremely important as a stakeholder, not because of the money, as I mentioned earlier, but because it has a high innovative power, it has know-how, it has expertise, and it has a high leverage through the economies of scale that we can expect. So, as a ministry, we have set up a number of instruments and initiatives to foster the involvement of the private sector in areas where business opportunities and development policy objectives and interests overlap. And the German Agribusiness Alliance, whom our ministry is a member of, is an important stakeholder in this regard as a platform for that dialogue with the private sector. But we also offer financial and technical support for companies themselves that invest, for example, in developing and emerging market countries. Specifically, German Development Corporation can assist companies with advisory services, with concept development, with competence development for local businesses, with financial support, and with their network overall. We have a huge network in all development countries that we can put to good use. So I'm very glad to be participating in today's section. I thank you for the attention, and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you also to you, Mr. Lesch, for this very brief overview what the ministry is doing. And I think if we go into all the details, it will take us a few hours. But I've already been discussing with the African Agri Council that we should have some further sessions to also see what German companies and the German ministry can do in specific areas. As we said before, sharing of know-how, developing new ideas, digitalization might be some of these areas we could focus on in the future. So we still have a few minutes in the session, which was actually very short with 30 minutes, but I mean, there are a lot of other sessions going on. So if there's any questions, comments in the chat, please feel free to post them now. Otherwise, we will all be available for you in case you would like to have some further information on some issues, or you would like to have a follow-up. So it doesn't seem to be the case for the session, and also the other sessions are starting now. So we're just receiving compliments, so I think that's good. So there's a question from Bongi and Bongi. Maybe I've lost it in the chat somewhere. We spoke about the SMEs already, so I don't know if that's the question. Otherwise, please just post it again if I have lost it scrolling to the chat.
Yeah. I think maybe Anangoni was asking consultancies work with DEG.
Thank you.
And Megan, if I understand your question correctly, so from an advisory perspective, we certainly accept proposals from advisors. We don't pay advisors ourselves, though. So you would certainly need to have an arrangement with you are representing when approaching us, but we are certainly open to reviewing all proposals which reach us.
Thank you very much. We also received a question from Alpha Priester, who is asking, how could we conduct the LPs on your side? I honestly have to confess that I'm not sure what he means with LPs. So if one of the two of you can help me out, it would be appreciated. Otherwise, I would ask Alpha to be a bit more specific in his question. Limited partners, investors.
Try and take that. So I think from both sides, so the ministry is certainly part of the German government, and KfW DEG is 100% shareholder, and DEG being 100% subsidiary of KfW. So we certainly, we don't have any LPs or direct investors, so we are indirectly government owned, and we fulfill the German general policy on parts. We do act as an LP. So if you're a general partner and you're looking to raise funds, then our Africa Grow program or even our direct investment part might be of interest, and then we would also ask for the proposals. But we are not a limited partnership. We don't have LPs directly.
So maybe adding to that, in case you're interested to reach out to any German companies who are active in the agri-field sector. As I mentioned before, we don't have that many investors, but we have some of them. Please be free to get directly in touch with me. We are happy to provide a platform for the direct exchange between businesses.
And Bongi, on the SME question you've asked, so we've got under our promotional programs, we certainly have got the upscaling program, which might be of interest. We've got support programs. They, on the direct side, it really depends on the size and the scale you've already achieved. There might be ways, maybe through Anna or the ministry, to connect to parties in Germany. I'm not sure on that part. We can certainly always look within our portfolio and try and make connections if needed, but that is more on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I think on my contact details, you'll find them on my profile, I hope. I think I've added everything.
Okay, wonderful. Also, you can also find them if we Google your name and open the website of the DEG. Okay, thank you very much to all of you. Thank you very much for this very short but interesting session. I hope we'll have another time to expand, go a bit more into detail, hopefully also in real life and not just virtually. So please enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much, Mr. Lesch, for your time. Thank you very much, and Keppler. I hope to speak to all of you soon again. Thank you.